Here's the first story from the Daily Mail. Tucker Carlson tells Russell Brand he doesn't know why he was fired by Fox News in his first interview, as he also makes the bombshell claim that the crowd outside the Capitol on January 6th was filled with federal agents. Well, in fact, we have that clip. Green Lives Matter. Not sure who that is, other than they have a good amount of followers, and they tweeted this. Tucker says the chief of Capitol Police told him that the crowd on January 6th was filled with federal agents. He planned on airing that interview, but was canceled before he could do so. Now we know why he was canceled and fired. Are you seeing it clearly now? They don't want the world to know the truth. Well, let me play for you that clip. It's only about 50 seconds long.
And that was a tip-off to me. I mean, I had no thought in my head as I watched this happen on television and in the subsequent weeks that U.S. law enforcement or military agencies had anything to do with it. That never crossed my mind. I never thought it was a false flag or anything like that. I'm not a conspiracist by temperament. I never thought that. And then I interviewed the chief of the Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, in an interview that was never aired on Fox, by the way. I was fired before it could air. I'm going to interview him again. But Stephen Sund was the totally non-political, worked for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this was not some right-wing activist. He was the chief of the Capitol Police on January 6th. And he said, oh, yeah. That crowd was filled with federal agents. What? Yes. Well, he would know, of course, because he was in charge of security at the site. So the more time has passed, now it's been...
So that's the gist of it. I mean, it's big news, but I do think it's going to be better when Tucker does actually interview the chief of police and we hear it straight from, this individual who's in charge of security. But
yeah, I would imagine he's going to actually deliver that promise as well, getting that out there. Because that'll just be, pretty much confirming a lot of what people have been saying right after January 6th. I don't know if you guys remember, but obviously this was right after the Summer of Love and everything like that. And a major narrative just from people was, well, Trump supporters don't really move like that. This seems a little bit off. This seems suspicious.
Right.
It seems as though the more time that's passing by, the more this stuff is just getting exposed every single month.
The scary thing, I suppose, is it's trickling in drops at a time.
Yeah.
We see videos of some guy saying like, go, 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 move, and encouraging people to engage in this stuff. Then we learn that there's more and more police officers who are in on it. The funny thing is, early on, you have that famous video with AOC where she's like, I'm, questioning the cops who may have been involved, or she said something to that effect after Alex Stein did that big booty Latina thing. She was saying like, we don't feel safe and stuff. And the point I made was, wow, AOC is claiming it was an inside job. But there's videos of cops opening the doors for people, waving people in, taking selfies with people. So right there, you could argue, the cops were letting people in. If this was really an insurrection, well, they were police officers letting them in.
Yeah.
Now there's a bigger question and increasingly more and more news being added to the mix, which is creating a bigger picture of actually there were people in the crowd encouraging it and making it happen. The reason why I say it's scary is that it's coming out only in slow droplets to the point where people don't care because it's not a bombshell.
Yeah, just drop as many 1,000 stories over the next handful of years, and like you said, not a big bombshell. I think for the general like population as well, they don't grab onto the little tiny hints and clues here and there. They really grab onto major bombshells. So if I went out and on the street and talked to people about these details that have been coming out, most people don't know about this stuff. They only know about major explosions in the media, and then, assuming that the mainstream media even covers it.
And then by the time we're at the general election next year, it will be common knowledge that it was largely a federal operation, and they'll be saying it was a good thing.
Yeah. It saved the election or helped save the election.
Helped save democracy.
Yeah.
First, they'll say, first they said it wasn't happening, you're lying. Now we have more information, it was. Then they're going to say, oh, well, you're exaggerating. And then by next year, it'll be a good thing. That's how the cycle goes. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, it happened. Yeah, and it was a really good thing that it did because they caught those evil people.
For sure.
Yeah, they prevented a siege by letting them inside and capturing them on the inside. Is probably the argument they'll make.
What would have happened if they tried to block them? It would have been real. Maybe they would have burned it down, So by opening the door, and encouraging them to do it was to find out who was really going to be a seditionist and et cetera, blah, blah, blah.
I was thinking a lot about these protesters last night, and they were addressing grievances. They didn't believe the election was fair, and they were trying to stand their ground and take space to prevent the signing of basically of Biden of the election. They were like whatever they were signing off and making it valid. They were like, no, we're going to stay here, so you can't. They weren't like attacking people or choking people. Ashley Babbitt got shot because she went a little too far. I think she climbing up and over the barricade, going into the inner chambers. got shot. I understand why. I don't like it. But they were like just taking up space.
Right. Not to mention that had been done all over the place for the last however many hundreds of days, like we watched in the Summer of Love. So they're like, well, I mean, why can't we do this as well?
Well, they even try to sell it as an armed insurrection. Like, they will go that far. I talk to people about this all the time, and they will go that far to be like, oh, well, some guy across the parking lot was caught with a firearm on his person or something like that. Therefore, now they can say it's an armed insurrection. Like, I was there, man. I was reporting on the thing. I was there. Not inside, but I saw a lot of people, and it's like it was nothing like any riot you've ever seen. It was okay. Some people misbehaving over here. You look to your right, and it's like 15 grandmas praying.
Yeah. I think there's a photo of a guy who's on the stairs, and he's got a gun on him.
Was he a Fed? Now I'm starting to wonder.
But this is exactly the point.
Well, there's tens of thousands of people there too.
So here's the issue: is that I remember seeing these photos circulate, mainly among the left. A lot of people on the right didn't know this. Even I was wrong about this early on when I was like, there were no guns. What are you talking about? How could you have a gun in D.C.?
Yeah, they found a couple.
And they did. And now that we're learning that there were law enforcement there, it's like, oh, now that kind of explains it, doesn't it?
Right.
Like, were those guys... Because the question is, how do you get a firearm onto these into the city, onto these grounds with heightened security and stuff like that? How did they not spot this or find it? It's entirely possible. I'm not saying that they were law enforcement. It's entirely possible some guy did bring a gun. You can walk in, you can find ways to bypass security, or it could just be that the photo they found of that guy was, because I don't think that guy's been charged either.
Well, and that's where it's like, okay, you raise a very reasonable question. Your question is, who is that? And even that gets criticized. It's, right. Stop that. You're a conspiracy theorist. Don't have this conversation. Don't get more specific. Don't show more footage. Don't educate people.
I should clear it up too. They weren't all, I don't think they were all just standing there taking up space. Some of them were getting violent, pushing cops, breaking things.
You're right. Yeah.
So those people, I think, deserve to be punished for what they did. Not for anything more.
Sure. I mean, you can't just fight police and just get away with it unless you're a BLM protester.
Right. Or Antifa.
Considering the previous year, it's not that much to ask to say, at least treat people fairly, the same way that that they treated the other protesters in D.C. and 6 months earlier.
But this is the point that Carter was making.
For sure.
You have the Summer of Love protests in riots in front of the White House, setting fire to St. John's Church, forcing the president to a bunker, and half the people on January 6th were nowhere near that level.
For sure.
They
injured Secret Service as well. They destroyed multiple patrol vehicles.
Like 100 or something Secret Service were injured. A guard post was set on fire and burned down.
Right outside the White House.
The barricades were torn down.
Yep.
The president was forced into a bunker. And so you get people who are marching peacefully to the Capitol. And first, always preface it, on one side, violence, very, very bad rioting. Yep, arrest those people. And then on the other side, you had the cops open the doors and say, don't agree with it, but respect it. And fan people into the point where there have been acquittals because there's video of the cops going like this and waving people in. So you're a guy watching Trump speak, and then someone says, hey, let's all go march down to the Capitol. And Trump says, we're going to go peacefully, watch politicians. You walk over, you see a building, you see the cops waving people in, you walk in, and they're like, you are now going to prison for the next several years without charge or trial because you're an insurrectionist. After you just watched all these videos of the far left trying to burn down a church in front of the White House. Talk about, it's not even hypocrisy or double standard. Who was it who said, Jacob Sobek, maybe it's a 3-tier justice system?
Yeah, he did. He said it on this show when he was guest hosting.
There's the protected class. Then there's the random run-of-the-mill people they care little about, and the persecuted class. Right. So if you're a regular person who's walking down the street, you may or may not get a ticket. They're going to ignore you. It's whatever. If you're a leftist extremist, not only will you be acquitted, like in D.C. when they were rioting during Trump's inauguration, they won a lawsuit and got paid out by tax dollars. And then if you're a Trump supporter, you will bumble around confused and you'll be in prison for 2 years.
Or if you're even perceived to be a Trump supporter or whatever, like Eric Herrera, he went to prison for... Actually, I'll first say he was a non-credentialed journalist, went in there with a camera into the Capitol building. Non-violent, nothing violent that he did, and he went to prison for 4 years.
What?
He went to prison. Sentenced to prison for 4 years, and I think he went in maybe 3 months ago. Non-violent. You can even check out his case.
What was he charged with?
So what they got a lot of these people with, and I'm not going to be, I'm not a total professional on this, but I will say, when it comes to the charges, what they were getting people with was obstruction of an official proceeding. That's what they got him on.
That is what they were doing.
Even though he was there being a a journalist literally with a DSLR around his neck. I believe he like went into one of the offices and held up a piece of paper. I'm pretty sure it says that on his case, but he got 4 years. You can compare that to, I mean, how many BLM or Antifa members can you compare that to from riots that did something 15, 20, 30 times worse that served way less time? That's insane.
There are absolutely many leftists who have been criminally charged. They often get ridiculously light sentences. There was just news about people at a Michael Knowles event, some far leftists who did something with explosives. They've been criminally charged. You have those 2 lawyers in New York who are giving out firebombs. And what did they get, like a year?
I think they got like maybe 2. They definitely got less than Eric. I know that for sure.
And we had Matt Brennan on the show
Did
talk
they get
about
disbarred?
I don't even know
probably.
But
I would imagine so. But I mean,
I would
even
really
not.
like to know if they got disbarred.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine too, but I wouldn't be
You never
shocked
know.
if we found out they didn't, though.
But Matt Brainerd was on the show just a couple days ago, and he mentioned that there's a guy, and probably more than one, that is currently in jail without charge or trial 2.5 years later. Not charged with anything. So you ask, what did they get these people on? Well, in some cases, nothing. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.